Woke's not dead, it's surely alive. It's living on the inside, not on my insides, but we must absolutely and forever crush the Great Awakening. Let's get into it. Before we go too far, my name is Casey. I have been a husband, father of 4, and therapist for 10 years, 13 years as a therapist, 10 years as a dad, and I have seen the Great Awakening from the time I entered into the therapy industry until now. And I, like a great many of my peers, would love to see it go the way of the dodo bird. If you would like to get behind a future of faith, fatherhood, and freedom in America, please like on the way in, and I'd love to earn your subscription. Let's get into the Great Awakening and whether or not woke is gone. In 2019, a Vox writer named Zach Beauchamp coined the phrase the Great Awakening, likening it to the Great Awakenings of the past, revivals within the church, and it is nothing if not a religious movement that has taken on tenets, it's made requirements, confessions, and it has all of the same practices as a world religion would. Let's get into a little bit about exactly when this happened, why it happened, and how possibly the therapeutic industry are the arbiters of this Great Awakening, the new priests in a class that no one asked for. While the dictates of the Great Awakening were lying underneath of the surface, especially in places like higher ed, which I personally went to participate in 2013 as a student, and I'm still participating in as I try to find further and further more conservative universities to attend, the Great Awakening has overtaken the educational system. And since that time, there have been some cultural occurrences that have allowed the institutional desires and designs of higher ed to be pushed into the mainstream and into the culture's awareness. In 2014, that was Ferguson, Missouri, where the police were accused of doing bunches of bad things as being racially motivated in doing those bad things, and then there were riots that ensued. And this was even during the Obama presidency. I remember being surprised, along with a great many of the United States residents, being surprised that we had just elected a black president for the first time, half black if you want to be very discerning about it, and yet we were being accused of being a overtly racist country as a whole in terms of the Ferguson riots. And that didn't just have to do with policing, it was cast upon the larger society as a whole. Then in 2015, Obergefell versus Hodges came about that redefined marriage. So we find that the tenets of the Great Awakening didn't just encompass race. We were beginning to take the very Marxist view that there were an oppressor and oppressed class, but we had begun to apply that oppression to not just race, because in Marx's case, it was financial, it was economics. Now the caste system was placed onto racial, gender, sexual identity or sexual preference, and then a great many other nuanced layers of oppression. So then in 2016, the Trump election began to radicalize the people who had already begun to embrace the idea that we were a racist, sexist monolith of white negativity, and that ultimately the Trump election ended up pushing them even further and further into their doctrinary statement of what it meant to be the Great Awakening, the generation of the woke. And then the Me Too movement comes about in 2017, which was largely attempting to bring to light many of the ways that even celebrities or people in the acting industry had been sort of abused by people in power. And then that got cast onto all men. So we started off with some men are doing bad things as they use their authority negatively in order to manipulate women. And then it became all men, especially men of a certain ethnicity, were blamed for just being oppressors. And then, of course, 2020, the renewed summer of love, where we all attempted to encompass John Legend's Imagine into our real lives as we watched the cities and states across our country burn down as the result of what was being recast as Ferguson 2.0, or examples of police oppression that were exemplars of what it meant to be in America, that there was an oppressed and oppressive class, and that you needed to be on the right side of it in order for you to be culturally accepted and even, yes, educated or taken into employment. If you didn't meet the tenets of the new religion of the Great Awakening, you were going to be cast into the outer darkness, just like the sinners and lepers of old. Authors like Glenn Lowry have stated that this movement, the Great Awakening, functions more like a religion and less like a civil rights movement. And that is part of what I stated earlier, that society operates in this oppression versus oppress narrative, that your true authority in society comes from your identity, not your competency or conduct. Immutable characteristics or things that like sexual preference end up being used as measurements for whether you're competent in society. You can see how this imbalance would start to make people mad, because ultimately that will cast out people who have high competency. And we might, in a perfect world or in an optimistic view, find ourselves in a parallel economy where those people's competency is actually recognized or used for purposes to forward the benefits of humanity. Disagreement is treated as harm in this new secular religion. So all of a sudden words become violence, and that is the type of mindset that has been used to commit violence against people who speak words that you don't like. Think about like Charlie Kirk, Michael Knowles, and others who have been harangued, if not completely deleted from the earth because of the words that they use. Intent is irrelevant. Impact is everything. Disagreement, again, being treated as harm. If your intent is to create a program that would help people in poverty, but the impact is affecting one group more negatively than another, then all of a sudden that is a racially biased program, or an ethnically biased towards one ethnicity, and that means that you are then cast into the outer darkness, just like another religion. Forgiveness is scarce and guilt is permanent. You cannot commit the bad behaviors without being cast out of the religion. And unfortunately, this religion encompasses, again, whether you can work, seek higher education, or, participate in polite society. McWhorter famously called this the new religion, complete with original sin, blasphemy, and excommunication. The Great Awakening has spread much more fervently among the elites, and therefore the working class has been largely untouched. However, this mindset has disproportionately caused harm where it had intended to help. So if you see everything through a power dynamic, if you see everything through an ideological lens that means someone is oppressed and another person is an oppressor, you can easily begin to apply that to like family structures or workplaces that don't really have a bias, but you can begin to see it that way, or economies, or the way cities are set up, or states or countries, and all of a sudden you begin, just like the Bible says, I just read this last night, that fathers will begin to be pitted against sons and mothers against daughters, because when someone takes the religion and someone doesn't, conflict is inherent. Jesus said that he came not to bring peace, but a sword. He didn't mean an actual kinetic sword. He meant that when someone takes Christ, when someone takes the gospel on and another family member does not, there will be conflict. And just like that statement, Jesus was right then and he's right now. When you create a new religion and some people take it and some people don't, conflict is inevitable. Okay! The Great Awakening has actually given moral authoritarian structures where it promised to erase division. It has promoted division. It has required self-censorship. People can't say the hurty words, otherwise, again, you're cast out of the religion. That has created declining institutional trust, because institutions like therapy, who are performatively secular, are unable to even tell you that, well, maybe a relationship with a higher power might help you. That is not allowed. Those words will get you, again, cast out of the religion. It has caused increasing anxiety and relational breakdown, less marriages, less children, less trust, more battle between the sexes, between men and women, and more battle between classes. Because as you point out, that everyone's either an oppressor or oppressed, when you do that long enough, people begin to silo into their tribes, and then they see their tribe somewhere in the hierarchy. So the irony is, in order to try to erase hierarchies, they just made everyone perpetually aware that they stand somewhere in a hierarchy and they're being oppressed by someone. So congratulations to you wokesters. You just broke the entirety of the framing and the goals that you had in the beginning. And instead of erasing categories and making this egalitarian utopia, John Lennon's Imagine, you in fact taught everyone that they have a category that they fit into, and in some way they're being disillusioned by someone.
Who don't punch women, who just want to go to the store.
Wait a second. Wait a second.
Don't do any of the things that you're saying all Muslims
Wait a second.
stereotyping.
Wait a second.
Things, and you're painting the whole group religion with that.
No. Let's get down to who has the right answer here. 1 billion people, you say. All these billion people don't hold any of these.
5 or something.
Don't hold these pernicious beliefs.
No.
I would.
Well, they don't.
That's just not true, Ben. That's just not true.
Can I just express how I think it breaks down in terms of
the idea.
You haven't even defined
you're trying to say that these few people, that's all the problem is, these few bad apples. The idea that someone should be killed if they leave the
That's
Islamic...
horrible. That should...
Wait. You're saying that the idea
idea
that someone should be killed if they leave the Islamic religion is just a few bad apples?
The people who would actually believe and enact that you murder somebody if they leave Islam is not the majority of Muslims at all.
Okay.
Progress doesn't come from ideological purity tests. It comes from competence, forgiveness, and a shared humanity. And this is the exact things that the Great Awakening has dashed and torn asunder. And this is the result. We live in a divided world. Congratulations, wokesters. You didn't get what you wanted, but you certainly won the battle. The war, that will be yet to be seen. If you'd like to put your shield up at the front lines along with me, I would love your support. Thank you for watching to the end of the video, and I would love it if you subscribe, hit the bell. Most of my viewers don't see my videos because I say things like what I said today. Have a great one.